Good evening. My name is Marsha Little. I am the Regional Director for Michigan Small Business Development Center here at Kettering University. And this is Starting a Business. Everything you wanted to know about it and maybe didn't even think you ought to ask about it yet. I'm going to introduce the Small Business Development Center. One of the unique aspects of our organization is that we are always partnered with another organization that has an aligning interest. As many of you will get to know quite intimately in the course of planning your business, you'll have this thing called overhead. You're going to have fixed expenses that you have to pay whether you make 1 sale or 0 sales. How do you support that overhead? Well, as an organization like ours is, with federal funding and some state funding as well, we could not put the majority of our funding to client services if we had to pay rent and utilities and all that other stuff that goes with overhead. The business model we use is that we find a host organization for every one of our offices. You can see in that state diagram, those are by colors, those are the regional territories. And within each of those regions, there are many, many offices and service centers. And you will find all of those partnered with somebody else. So the Flint Regional Office, which we call the I-69 Trade Corridor, is this gray area right here. Shiawassee, Genesee, Lapeer, St. Clair, Sanilac, Tuscola, and Huron counties. We are regionally office located right here at Kettering University. We've been here since 2007. We have a satellite office in Shiawassee County. It's at a Chamber of Commerce. We have offices all over the UP, if you can believe it. We have 4 core services. The first is that we provide absolutely no cost one-on-one counseling. Any person, any type of business at any stage. It might be pre-venture, might be early stage startup, it might be a company that's been around literally for 150 years. It doesn't matter to us. The SBA broad definition of a small business is 500 or fewer employees. So that's a pretty expansive range of businesses with whom we work. And the type of business. Across our network, there are between 80 and 100 counselors. These are professional counselors. I could say that the majority of those counselors have owned or do still own their own businesses. So folks, they've walked the talk. Second thing that we do is what we call business education. We offer workshops of all kinds. They're available all over the state, different places, different topics. You can take a look at sbdcmichigan.org and you can see what's on the calendar. You can sort by topic, you can sort by location. And if you don't happen to see something you want to do here in Flint, maybe you'll see it at Delta or you'll see it in Lansing, and it's something you really want to do right now and it's there, you can register for that. Within the SBDC network, like I said, it's all interconnected, so you can go to any class anywhere. Third thing that we do is what we call information-based planning assistance. One of the most important things we're going to talk about in detail this evening is what do you need to know? What information do you need to gather? How do you need to gather it? What do you do with it once you've gathered it to make good decisions about your business? A lot of people want to start a business and they come to me and they tell me they've got this great idea and then they say, I think it's going to be a success. I hope, I wish, I feel. Well, you know, if you went to a banker and said that, they'd say, see ya. That's not solid. They want you to say, I can affirm that this is going to be a success based on these facts, these statistics, this information. So you've got to have information that's going to tell you, yes, this makes sense, or, ooh, no, you know what? There's kind of a big hole here. I maybe need to rethink this or go in a slightly different direction. So information-based planning, we will help you learn how to be good. Anybody know what I'm talking about? That big MR, market research. I say that and people go, oh, no, I don't want to do that. It's not hard, folks, but it's important and you can learn how to do it and you need to keep doing it. It's not something you do one time when you're going to start a business. You have to have that skill because you're in an ever-changing landscape of delivering your product or service. You need to be paying attention to what's going on in the industry, the market, the customers, and the competition. And the only way you're going to do that is by going and gathering that information and paying attention to what's happening and applying it to your business at that point in time. So we're going to talk a lot about that in this class tonight, but that's one of the things that we can help you with. The fourth thing that we do, we're one of only 10 states that has special certification to deliver assistance in very high-tech, advanced technology kinds of products or processes. There are some unique challenges to taking something that's innovative and new and bringing it to market. Sometimes it takes a long period of time. Sometimes it has a research and development phase that costs a lot of money. There are just different challenges associated with it. So we have a team of specialists that work with that. We do also happen to have within our organization some other specialist teams. We have a team that's dedicated to growth companies. So a company that's got between $500,000 and $1 million in sales, and they might have 10 to 50 employees, and they want to grow beyond a certain where they are at this particular point in time. We have some consultants that are trained in some special tools for analysis and strategic planning, and a lot of experience in consulting, and we could bring those counselors in on growth situations. We have experts in exporting, and of course I've talked a little bit about technology. The small business is, we have small business counselors all over the state that can work, as I said earlier, with any type of business at any stage. We're going to talk about your readiness to be an entrepreneur, to be in business. We're going to help you figure out how you can determine whether or not your idea has legs, whether it really makes sense or not, and be able to evaluate it. We're going to outline the steps for starting a business. One of the things that people often say to me is, oh my God, there's so much to do and it's so complicated and I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do first. Well, so remember, I'm a pilot. I love checklists, and this book is your guide of everything that you really should be knowing about relative to starting and operating your business. So you're going to have a checklist of the steps for starting a business. There are other checklists in there too. And then we will talk about the business plan process. Turn to page 2 in the book, and we will be referring to this book pretty regularly through this class. You do not need your pens and pencils out right now. This is a self-assessment. We're not going to do this in class. You're actually going to leave here with homework tonight. You have a sheet of homework of things that you need to do to build a foundation of what's going to happen with your business before you come back and meet with a counselor, because you got to give us something to work with. We need some clay that we can help you mold into that business, but you've got to do that initial work. So this self-assessment is going to be part of your homework. And what this does is it's going to help you kind of do a mental scan of what your personal attributes are and whether being in business for yourself is a good fit for you. Sometimes it isn't. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't go into business. It just means you have to think about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and maybe you need to partner with somebody that offsets some of your weaknesses and then enhances some of your strengths. But that's part of what you need to look at in this assessment. The other part of it has to do with the business side of things. What do you know how to do and what do you not know how to do relative to operating business? Here's a key point. Most people that start businesses start around a product or a service that they know how to do, that they want to do, that they love to do. Think about the man who builds cabinets. Beautiful, beautiful cabinets, and his neighbors and friends say, wow, you know, those are gorgeous. You ought to go into business. You ought to sell those. So he wants to go into business selling cabinets. But what does he know how to do? He knows how to build cabinets. Does he know how to manage finances? Does he know how to do a financial projection to understand what equipment he has to buy and what it's going to cost and what his operating expenses are going to be and what taxes he's going to have to pay? Does he understand that if he can only make 2 cabinets a week, that he probably can't make enough money to live on just 2 cabinets a week, that he's probably going to have to hire some people so he can make more cabinets, but that means he has to sell more cabinets? Well, now we're talking marketing and sales, and we're talking HR, because he has to have job descriptions and he has to interview and hire people, and then he has to train them and manage them. And oh my gosh, there's so much more to it. A business is not the product or service. The business is the frameworks of all the things that you need to do to support producing and delivering that product or service. And it is those things I mentioned. And financial is very important. If you're not comfortable with numbers, yes, we'll help you with that. But you need to get comfortable, because every decision you make in your business is going to have a number result. And it can be good and it can be bad. And you need to be watching that. You need to be understanding that. You need to be looking at those numbers on maybe a weekly basis, but definitely a monthly basis. And you need to have some benchmarks to know whether you're doing well or you're doing poorly. And you need to have cash, and you need to be able to monitor how that cash is flowing through your business. If you have employees, it's a huge, complicated system to hire and manage employees. And no, you can't just 1099 everybody. Mm-hmm. The IRS doesn't like that, and they come after you. So, in marketing and sales are not the same thing. Marketing is a very passive activity. It's getting your message out to the right customers at the right time and in the right way, that they're going to receive it and acknowledge it and respond to it. That's not sales. Sales is once you got their interest and they actually engage with you, you have to convert that interest into cash and an order and delivery of a product. That's very different. Just like you have to have an elevator speech for introducing yourself, you also have to have a sales speech. You have to know what you need to say to encourage someone to convert from interest to purchase. So there's a whole lot more to what is a business than just your product or service. And so we want you to be thinking about that. This assessment is to help you kind of identify what gaps you may have in that knowledge, and then think about how do you compensate for that. You probably can't afford to go out and hire an expensive CPA or get, an expert web designer or get, somebody who's going to run an HR department for you. But there are alternatives that you can look at. A lot of the alternatives have to do with who do you know. Start thinking about your neighbors, your relatives, your friends. Who do you know that knows how to do those kinds of things? And invite them to help you. Most people are willing to help. So this is all about the vision of your business. In a business, you have to start thinking out a little farther, especially if you're going to go to a bank. The bank wants to see about 3 years minimum of financial projections, and they want to see that you've got milestones for building and growing that business. But really, 5 years out, you need to start thinking, what do I want to do with this in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Because as Stephen Covey said, you need to start with the end in mind. Because how you design your building and how you design your business has a lot to do with what you want to achieve as the end result. So for a lot of you, it's important for you to think about, where's this business going to go? Am I going to do this for 5 years or 20 years? Am I going to build it up and I'm going to have a lot of my own personal equity in it that I can then recapture in the value of the business? So something to think about. What's your exit plan? I know most of you are thinking, I don't even know what my entry plan is. Well, how can I be thinking about my exit plan? But it is an important aspect. Where do you expect to go with this business? What do you expect to do with it ultimately? And have that in your mind. And how does your business fit into your personal life? Some of that's part of that personal assessment that we talked about on page 2. And you need to think about whether or not your business fits into your lifestyle, or if it's going to create a problem for you. Are your business goals aligned with your personal goals? If your personal goal is to make $100 million in the next 5 years, and you're selling soap at the farmer's market, well, they're probably not aligned. So those are the kinds to think about. You're going to have to adjust one of your expectations in that regard. So the whole point of that, when it comes to the personal and business assessment, is making sure that your work life, your personal life are balanced and fit together. Otherwise, it becomes kind of a very uncomfortable situation. And it really can have a negative effect on the business, certainly. So, ways to start a business. Certainly, you can start it from scratch. You can buy an existing business. There are pros and cons to buying an existing business. The pro is that the business has probably equipment and facilities and fixtures and all the kinds of things that you need so that you can get started right out of the gate. One of the cons might be is, what's the reputation of that business? If you're buying a business that has a great reputation, there's value in that. Brand, image, and reputation is a lot of where you create value in the business that you build and grow. So if you're going to buy a business that has a bad reputation or a bad brand or a bad image, you might want to think about just buying the assets of the business, or just the physical, tangible property like the desks and the equipment, etc. And you're going to have to think about strategies. If you're going to do it in the same place, you're going to have to think of strategies to offset the negativity associated around that business in that location. So that requires some extra strategies in your plan of action. Franchises, obviously, they can be very, very expensive, the established ones, but there are a lot of up and coming. You're still going to have to probably borrow money, so if that's an issue, you have to think about that. Inheriting a business, that's obvious. Joining a business isn't quite so obvious. Joining a business is looking for an opportunity, one, to experience that kind of business. You can't imagine how many people have come into me and said, I want to open such and such business. And I say, well, what kind of experience do you have in that? None. I just think it would be fun. Well, you know what? You really ought to try it first, because doing it from the pleasure side of things is a lot different than doing it from the business side of things. You need to experience it from the business side. So if you've not done what you want to do, go find a way to experience it. You can go volunteer someplace. You can go tell somebody, I love this kind of business. Would it be okay if I would, kind of did a day on the job or a week on the job and just helped out here? You don't have to pay me, but I'd love to just experience what it's like here. The other possibility is, and I've actually had clients do this, looking for an employment opportunity, doing what you want to do, where there's the chance that you could become a partner or an owner of that business. That's what joining a business is, looking for an opportunity that you can groom yourself for that business. Steps to starting a business. Turn to page 3 in your book if you would please. This is your first checklist. It's only 8 steps to starting a business. We're going to spend some time, most of our time tonight, really focusing on number 2 and number 3, research and cost analysis. So, selecting the business ideas at the top of that checklist. First thing you need to ask yourself, when you have an idea of the type of business that you want to start, you have to ask, what need does it fill? What problem does it solve? The basis of any business is customers. The basis of customers is demand. The basis of demand is need or problem solving. Right? And nowadays, given our economy, the other aspect you have to be very concerned about is who has the money to spend on it. Think through these questions. Who's going to buy what you have to sell? Why would they buy from you? How are they going to learn about your product, and where are they going to buy it? I heard an online store. Are you going to have a storefront? Are you going to go door to door? What's your mechanism? Think about your market potential for this idea you have. How does it benefit your customers? The way to get customers to pay attention to you isn't to talk to them about the features of your product or your service. I sell bikes that have 2 wheels and 10 speeds, and they go fast, they go slow. Those are features. I sell bikes that are going to make you feel like the wind is flying through your hair and you can conquer the world on this bike. I'm not saying much about the bike itself, but I'm saying about how it's going to make you feel, how it's going to make you happy. What does McDonald's sell? Happiness. I gave it away. Yeah. Everybody thinks they sell food and hamburgers and more healthier food, but all of their marketing, think about this, the next time you see a McDonald's ad, it's all built around the sense of well-being. It's built around convenience and low cost and happiness. It's called a Happy Meal for a reason. And I'm loving it is their tagline, because it's all about people feeling good after they've gone through McDonald's. Think about Mom. She's got 6 kids in the back of that van, and she drives through McDonald's. They're all screaming and they're throwing stuff around in the car, and she drives through McDonald's, buys 6 Happy Meals. She drives out of there with a smile on her face because those kids are quiet in the back with their Happy Meals. It's all about happiness. It's about the benefits to the customer. But you got to think about, again, how many people are there, how many customers, how many businesses are there that you're going to be able to sell to? What is your service area? What are you going to target initially? One of the things that is often a challenge is people want to start businesses that are bigger than they can possibly be starting out. You got to start small. You got to start with what you can manage, and you got to start at where you can reach out and touch those customers. People do business with you. They have to get to know you. They may eventually associate you with your brand, or they may substitute you for your brand. You know, when Home Depot started out, it was two guys. I'm sorry I don't remember their names, but they started in a pole barn. And people did business with those two guys. But then eventually they started recognizing Home Depot. And Home Depot was just one little pole barn. They didn't start out with 60 locations around the US from day one. There's not enough resources to do that. Quite often I'll get clients that come in. I had one guy that, this is a true story, I have lots of stories because I have lots of clients. He came in and had a fabulous business plan. Very, very carefully written, well thought out, phenomenal financial projections. I had never seen a client come in that understood and manipulated Excel so beautifully as he had done. But I had to say, this isn't going to fly. And you know why? Because the idea he had, the business he wanted to start, was so big, he had such a big idea from the very beginning that all he needed was $6.5 million to get it started. Who's going to loan him $6.5 million? Nobody I knew, not for that particular type of business. Now that's not to say that there aren't some people out there that are willing to support a business startup with millions of dollars, but usually those are those very high-tech things where it's going to be such a phenomenal change in the marketplace that they're going to get back their millions and then gazillions on top of that. And those are special investors. Those are those what we call venture capitalists that, you know, plug in those, but that doesn't happen for the average business. So don't anybody get any ideas. There's no millions of dollars out there for you. So thinking about what area you're going to be serving, who are you up against? Who's out there that's already doing what you do? And trust me, everybody has competition. That you would have a product or service so new and so revolutionary that nobody knows they need it, that's a different problem. But if you've got something that somebody is already able to buy from somebody else, you've got competition. And competition can be direct or indirect. So it could be exactly like what you're doing, or just, it could be any number of things slightly different that is a trade-off. So you have to think about what's going to make you different than whoever else is already out there, and what you can do to get people to buy from you instead of from someone else. So turn to page 7 in your book, if you would please. Another checklist. This is the list of the types of information that you should gather related to your type of business. You need to have a functional knowledge of the industry. That's the big picture. What's going on in the world of your type of businesses? Literally the world. Because trust me, this is a global marketplace nowadays. You may think you're just a little business here in Flint or Swartz Creek, but by golly, something happening over in China or in, folks, does anybody notice what's happening to gas prices lately? And this whole business of that refinery that just got taken over in Iraq, and what's going to happen to gas prices? You have a business that relies on transportation. Okay, there's a big threat for your business. The cost of gas is going to go crazy. So you need to pay attention to what's going on in the world and how that relates to you. So the big picture. As you study the big picture, you're going to see what the marketplace is. The market means anybody or any business that would buy from you. Some people will sell to businesses. Some people will sell to consumer people. Some people will sell to both. So understanding everybody or every business type of business that's out there that would buy what you had to sell. But you can't market to all of those. You have to kind of narrow the field, and you want to narrow it down to those that have the greatest need and the most money to spend. And a lot of this research is going to point you in that direction. You're going to find out what those segments are, what the groups are within that big space of market, what each of those groups looks like. And groups is based on them having similar attributes or characteristics. Once you can narrow that down, then you can zero in on who's my best customer. Of all those groups, what does the best customer look like? The one that has the greatest desire, the most burning need, and the money to spend. And then last but not least, you need to look at the competition. And you're going to learn about competition on a bigger scale than just looking around your neighborhoods. You're going to think about, as you do this wider research, you're going to think about what types of competition are actually out there. Direct and indirect. Direct is the most like what you do. Indirect could be any number of things, and you got to be kind of aware of that, and especially related to your own area where you think you're going to be selling. So you've got this list. These are the kinds of items of information that you should be looking for. And it may not be that you're going to find buckets and buckets of information. You just need some specific details, like, are there associations, trade associations related to your industry? Figure out who those are and explore them. How big is your industry? How many businesses of your type exist in the world? And then how many exist in Genesee County? Start narrowing. Think the big picture and then start narrowing it down to your own location. But just go through that checklist. Where do you do this? Still, the number one place to go do market research is your local library. I will tell you, especially for those of you who are watching this on video, that the Bright Side has an episode about libraries. And in that episode, they talk about the libraries and their importance to people that want to start businesses, because they can help you with research. They have tools to use for research. So, local library has a lot of the reference books that are on here. Librarians are all about information, folks. You go in and tell them the kind of research, the type of business you want to start, and the research you're looking for. You pull out your little checklist here and say, I need to gather information on these things. Help me find where I'm going to find this. They will help you. The libraries are really working hard to be relevant in the 21st century, and they understand that they can be very supportive to community economic development by helping small businesses with this information need. So your local libraries are ready for you folks. Use them. Take advantage of that knowledge and expertise. The other place is certainly online research. That's, kind of like that black hole of information. There's so much out there. Sometimes it's pretty hard to stay on track, and you get carried away and you end up running down blind alleys because you link hop from one thing to another. So be careful about that so that you can be more efficient in your online research. One of the places that you can do online research that's the best of both worlds, and it's in bold up here, is the Michigan Electronic Library. You also have a handout that says MEL on it. MEL.org, Michigan Electronic Library, has research tools available to the public online. Industry research is very expensive. If you go online and you say you're looking for industry research, a lot of times you'll get some really good returns, but it says buy this report. And it's several $100s, or it's $2,000, or it's $5,000. I'm not kidding. It's that expensive because it's costly to constantly be gathering that information. So the companies, the businesses that collect and report on research, it's a very expensive proposition for them to do that, and that's how they recapture it. They sell the reports and it costs a lot of money. Guess what? You know where those are available? They're available a lot of times through library systems. You can access them for free. MEL.org, you can go in. Now, each one of the tools that's there, Business Decision and Demographics Now, you'll recognize those two. They're right by each other. Those are my two favorite tools because of what they do. You'll have to learn how to use those. They are complicated, and there are tutorials. But I'm telling you that if you learn how to use those tools, you can go back and back and back again. It's like you can keep going to the well, folks, and coming home with a whole lot of information that's going to be incredibly valuable to your business now and going forward in the future. There are a lot of government websites out there that have data and statistics on them. Trade websites. Every business, every type of business is likely to have a trade association, or 2 or 3 or 4. Trade associations are organizations that are all about providing information and resources and tools for businesses of a certain kind. Our Small Business Development Center is part of the Association of Small Business Development Centers. We have a trade association, and they help us with tools and information. And I can just go to their website, and as a member of that, I can upload information anytime. You want to find out who the trade associations are, the good ones, the big ones that have lots of resources associated with them for your type of business. Then go check them out online. A lot of times, well, not anymore so much, you might be able to find research data available on their website, and you don't have to be a member to access it. I've been seeing a trend, though, over the last 5 years where you can't get to that data without being a member. But sometimes, you know, a $100 membership is a pretty cheap investment for the kind of information that you're going to be able to access through them. And then you've got the membership, and when you're in business, they have insurance programs and a whole lot of other things that you can tap into group rates because you're part of an association. I'm not advocating for that. You can do that with a Chamber of Commerce, too, for a lot of things. And I do advocate for chamber memberships. But trade websites can be valuable. Now, even if you can't get an industry report off of a trade website, almost all of them have publications. They may be electronic, they may be print, but most of it is archived electronically. What do they put in those publications? They put articles about the kinds of things that you need to know. What are the trends in your kind of business? What are the things that are on the upswing? What are the things that are on the downswing? What are the opportunities? What are the threats that are on the horizon? All that industry information that you need to gather. How big is that industry? You're going to have to dig around in those magazines and look for the articles that are going to have those kind of stats in there, but there's going to be a lot of information that's publicly available. You just have to dig around for it, and you will find it. Here's the secret to success also. Last bullet point is competition websites. Find a business that is exactly like what you want to do, or as close as possible. Not necessarily in your neighborhood, but it could be in California, it could be in Owasso, who knows. Find a business that's successful and learn from them. If they're successful, they've figured it all out. They know who their customers are. They know how to advertise to their customers. They've probably got a website that's geared to those customers. What prices are they charging? What services do they offer? What products do they? I mean, check out the competition. They've created a model for you. You can learn from that model. Just do something a little different. Do something a little better. Something more unique, right? But it's out there for you. So here's some other websites that are out there, a lot of government websites. We've talked about all of the research I've been talking about so far is what we call secondary research. You are going to go out and gather information that somebody else has already collected and reported. You're going to find it, you're going to read it, process it, and apply it to your business situation. You might want to do what we call primary research. You might want to go out and gather some information specifically related to your business. Such as, I had a lady that wanted to start a Christian women's online bookstore, because what she said to me was, I can never easily find the kinds of Christian literature that I'm looking for at sites like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or even Zondervan's. So I'm going to create a site just for Christian women. And she talked about the kinds of things she was going to put on that site. And I said, well, where did you get your product line? Well, it's what I want. I said, well, but you're only one Christian woman. You know what? There might be a few other opinions out there. Maybe you're missing some product opportunities here. Well, how do I do that? Well, she's a member of a Bible study group. So I said, okay, bake some cookies, take some tea. At the beginning of your Bible study, ask if they would answer some questions. Do a little focus group or a little survey one-on-one with this group. And ask questions, ask all the same questions. What do you want on the site? What matters to you? What other things besides this kind of product would you like to see on the site? What's going to make you come to this site, perhaps pay more money than what you would pay somewhere else? Get that kind of information because it's specifically about what you want to do, and it's going to inform how you create your business. She did that, and she came back and she said, oh my gosh, I'm glad I did that. One of the things that hadn't occurred to her, because her kids were all grown up, a lot of these women said, well, we're looking for children's Christian resources, especially for summer, things that our kids can do during the summer, activity books, etc. Hadn't even occurred to her. She didn't have young children anymore. So it was a huge aha for her to know that there were some other things that she could put on her site. But then the issue for her was, and this, I'm going off track here a little bit, but it's a good place. For her, it was an issue of she wanted this online store so it'd be easy to manage. She didn't want a site-based store and have the hours that she would have to have staff there. I said, you're still going to have to go out and you're going to have to one-on-one with people to engage them, to know about your website. You're going to have to do a lot of direct marketing to drive traffic to your website and give them a reason to go to that website versus going to Amazon, where everything is cheap and free shipping, right? So, things to think about for everybody. So, surveys, focus groups, your own research with potential customers. Another thing you need to do, we talk about competition, right? You're going to have competition. Once you've gotten that more global perspective, then you start to look around. Okay, who am I up against right here? What 2 or 3 other businesses are my chief competition? You need to go check them out, folks. You need to really know who they are, where they are, what they do, how they do it, what they charge, what's good about them, what's bad about them. Because you have to be better or more unique than they are if you're going to take customers away from them. And that's the only way you're going to be successful. And if you look at page 8 in your book, there's a little form there. It's an information gathering form to help you organize information. A tool you can use if you go and shop your competition. And when I say shop your competition, I'm saying shop it. Don't stalk it. And trust me, they're going to know the difference. You need to be a customer. You need to have the customer experience so that you know what your customers are experiencing there. So go in with the intention of going through what you would normally go through if you're going to consider purchasing something there. You don't necessarily have to go to the cash register with it, but experience the staff, experience the environment, look around and see what all they've got to offer and if they have everything you're interested in. You can write down what the things are that matter to customers going in to make a purchase of that particular product or service, and then you can make notes, not on a clipboard that you carry in with you. That's not really good practice. But you can keep that sheet of paper in the car, and when you come out, you can make notes about what happened in that customer experience. And I say you need to write it down for each competitor that you shop, because after you've done 2 or 3, it all runs together. And it's really important to be able to differentiate, to see who does what and who does it well and who does it poorly. And you can do that by rating each of those characteristics. You can also add up the scores of each of the competitors that you shop and find out who's the big dog in your neighborhood, because you've got to be better than the best, right? Or different. Find some way to be different and better than that person or that business. I've already mentioned this. Check out their advertising. Check out their websites. If they're successful, they've got the formula pretty well figured out, and you can learn from that. Another thing we can do is, again, find a business like what you want to do, but not in this vicinity. But find another business and go talk to them. Ask them. Tell them that you're interested in starting a business, but you're not in their neighborhood, so it's no problem for them. And would they answer questions, or would they mind if you just observed, if you spent some time hanging around? Most people want to help, and they're happy to help somebody from another community as long as you're not a competitor of theirs, right? Quick story. I had one of our students, these are all adults, of course, in a boot camp that we taught, a 7-week boot camp on how to plan and write a business plan. When she introduced herself, she was one of those pink-slipped buyout GM engineers. And as we went around the room introducing ourselves, she was very tiny and very soft-spoken, and she said, I'm never going back to the automotive industry. I'm going to take my buyout. My husband and I have saved money. We're going to cash in our 401k. And I'm going to do what I always wanted to do. I'm going to get out of the automotive industry, and I'm going to build a pet resort. I'm going to hire groomers, and I'm going to do kenneling, and I'm going to do daycare activities for pets. I'm going to have a fabulous pet resort. I've always wanted to do that. She wrote a fabulous business plan. In the process of writing her business plan and doing the research, she found a pet resort in Texas that was exactly like what she wanted to build here in Genesee County. She called them on the phone, started asking questions. Pretty soon they were communicating on a regular basis. Get this, they invited her to come and live and work with them for a month. How cool is that? And here's an object story to that. When she came back, I said, wow, that is so cool. Are you ready to go to the bank? Because she was in a position to be able to get the funding that she needed to open this to build and open this pet resort. She said, well, actually, no, I've decided to go in a whole different direction. I'm not going to do the pet resort. What happened? You were so excited about it. You're so passionate about it. She said, yeah, I lived it and worked it for a whole month, and I absolutely hated it. Remember what I said at the beginning? Do it first. Thank God. Think about it. That was about a $300,000 capital investment she would have been making, and she would have ended up hating it. Oh. So, anyway, it had a happy ending. So talk to non-competitors. I'm not sure anybody will ask you to come and visit and work with them, but that's a possibility. You can hire research, or you can pay for research. Again, be careful what you pay for, because some of it isn't worth beans. We often get the question about college or university students. That is an option. There's cautionary tales with that. A lot of times you want to get this thing done. You want to move forward, and they don't move quite to the speed you want to move. Again, you can buy research. Market research vendors, there's all kinds on the internet. So, we've talked about looking at the industry, the market, the customers, and the competition. Now you've got information, you've got facts. You've gathered all this information, and like I said before, it's kind of like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. You've thrown them kind of on a page. Now you start to hook them together so they tell a story. And you can start to see what that picture looks like when those pieces get hooked together, right? Now when you see that picture, it's going to tell you, is this a good thing or is this a not so good thing? What's missing? Do I need to go in a slightly different direction because of what I found out? If I were going into the roofing industry and I was going to do the conventional asphalt shingles, and yet there were some new solar reflective shingles coming on the marketplace, and there's more and more demand for that, and the cost of asphalt shingles is going to continue to go up, and the lifespan of an asphalt shingle is 10 years versus the 20 or 30 years that are some of these newer shingles. If I'm discovering that in my research, it should tell me that, oh yeah, well, asphalt shingles might not be the direction I want to go. Because, you know, in 2 years, I'm going to have trouble getting the materials, and nobody's going to want them. So I need to think about going in a different direction. That's a lot of what this is about. You have information. You can weigh the facts and decide, does this make sense, or do I make some course corrections? If you go back to page 2 to that steps to starting a business, 2A says, after you've done market research, it doesn't say quit because it's a lousy idea. It just says reconsider or refine the concept. Based on what you now know, tweak it so that it'll work. Okay, that's a decision point. Next section is number 3, startup cost analysis. Now there's 2 ways to go about this. If you look at page 10, there is a startup cost analysis summary sheet. This is a classic sheet that we use actually in the business planning portion of financials as to how much money do we need to borrow. But we don't want to wait until we're thinking about going to get a loan until we know if we can get a loan, and until we know whether or not we have the resources to float a business that we're thinking about that has a lot of equipment or supplies or facilities associated with it. What are those costs going to be? And what could I possibly tap into in terms of funding resources? That's the point we're at in number 2. Where's the money going to come from, and how much do I have, or how much can I get? Because one of the problems we often see is that people start businesses they can't afford, because they go out and they get a loan for what they can get, or they pull together money from friends, family, and others, and that's all they've got to work with. But it isn't enough, because their idea was bigger than their pocketbook. So we want you to evaluate your pocketbook first, and then take, if you have this big idea, that $6.5 million idea, remember that one? It's not a bad idea, it's just that that's too big a scale. So let's scale it down to what is reasonable and potentially available to you. So we're going to talk about that. So there are 2 ways you can go about that. if you have a business in mind, and most people, you can close your eyes and in your mind's eye, you can see a picture of what your business looks like. You can see what the location looks like, and you can see what the equipment and the furniture and the facilities and the product and the inventory and all that. You can see all of that in your mind's eye. Well, start looking at that picture and start writing down what all those items are. Make yourself those shopping lists of the stuff that you think you need and want to start your business. And then go out and do a startup cost analysis. Get quotes for some of that stuff, or all of that stuff, to find out what it all adds up to. And for each one of these lines here, these are the kinds of things that you really ought to be considering as startup costs for a business. You would have a shopping list for each one of those, and you're going to add up the costs on that shopping list to bring those totals over here and add it all up. And when you get to that bottom line, you're either going to go, or you're going to go, ha! Because it's like way bigger than your pocketbook, right? So that's one way to approach it. The other way is, let's talk about what's available to you and where the money might come from. And knowing how much you have to work with is maybe a little easier approach to it. And it's not about the money. If you have the will and the determination to start a business, it isn't about how much money you have to start it. Because most of the biggest businesses today started with nothing. They built those businesses on determination, one success at a time. And I could give you, and maybe if we have time, I'll give you a story about a lady that wanted to start a restaurant and had no money. And restaurants are pretty capital intensive. 10 years later, she's a very successful caterer. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So, sources of financing. How much do you have to kick into this? It doesn't matter whether you borrow from a bank or whether you're going it alone. You've got to have resources yourself. Or you bootstrap, you start with nothing. So how much do you have? You have to think about that. Do I sell my car? We don't recommend it, but do I cash in my 401k? Do I borrow from friends, family, and those question marks, we call it the 3 F's, friends, family, and fools, yeah. Who said that? Yeah. Partner. Do you have a partner who's going to help you out here and is going to kick in some money? I'm just going to be a silent partner. I'll just help you out with some cash. I'm here to tell you, if you're going to do that, trust me, if you have a partner that's kicking in money, they won't be silent for long, and they will be in your business. So if you're going to do any kind of a partner situation, whether it's a working partner or even just a money partner, make sure you get it in writing. Who does what? Who can't do what? How do you exit a partnership agreement? And how do you mediate disputes? Those are the key elements of a partnership agreement. Grants and loans. Let's talk about that. You can go to the SBA website and it will tell you. So this isn't Marcia saying this. This is the SBA is telling you that the government does not give grants directly to individuals or businesses. There is no such thing as a government grant for starting your business. Now, there used to be some grant programs. Grants go to nonprofit organizations or agencies or government entities that have programs, and those programs may provide services or granting or programs that are related to economic development or business development. A lot of that stuff is gone. I'm sorry to have to break that news to you about the grants, but that's the reality. There are microloan programs. Actually, Metro is one of the micro lenders here in town. SBA loans. I want to mention that. And remember, all of you got this SBA magazine, so you can read about the SBA programs. But let me clarify for you. The SBA does not loan money. The SBA facilitates lending of money, either through commercial banks or through certified special lenders, like a certified CDFI, Certified Development Financial Institution, CDFI. Those are organizations that are chartered to receive grant money from the SBA, which they can use to give loans at an interest rate. And then as those loans are paid back, they keep replenishing their fund and or they get more money from the SBA, but that's not a direct SBA loan. The primary function of most SBA loan programs is to guarantee loans, which sweetens the deal for the banks. Because the SBA will guarantee now up to 90% of that loan value, which means that the bank reduces its risk down to 10% of that loan. So there are sometimes, if the business plan looks good, and the bank gets to decide, does this look like it's got legs or not? If they say, well, you know, it's a little outside our risk portfolio, but if the SBA will guarantee it, we'll write it, then it can go forward. If the SBA will accept it, they have to review it and determine, yes, that they will do it. But you can read a lot about the SBA lending programs and then the specialty loan programs through what I was mentioning before, those CDFIs. There are banks willing to do small business loans. It is still tough in this economic environment to get a startup loan for one reason. You are absolutely an unknown. You can have the world's best business plan, but you don't have any history. You haven't done it yet. So the bank really doesn't know. I mean, it's a gamble. And it's not a gamble that they're always that interested in doing. So they've got some pretty tough criteria for lending that I'll go over with you. I don't have it on a slide, and it's not in the book. So let's talk about what it takes to qualify for a loan. So suppose you've done your startup cost analysis. You think you're going to go to the bank and get a loan. You've added up all of your potential costs. And for ease of my calculations, let's assume it's $100,000. And you haven't fainted off your chair at that price. So if you think you're going to go to the bank, get a $100,000 loan, you're mistaken. Because they want you to be strong enough in your belief that this is a going business that you're willing to risk your own money. And you know how much they want you to risk? Not half. That would be pretty awful. But 30% is still pretty awful. That's pretty big. Generally it's between 25 and 30, but they lean towards 30, again, because it's a gamble. It's a big gamble for them. So if you need $100,000, you've got to come up with $30,000 yourself. Now, you can do that. That may be you go out and find those friends, family, and fools to help you come up with the 30 grand. But you gotta prove to the bank you've got it. Just like when you buy a house, and you're going to say, I have a down payment, you have to show them the account that money is going to come out of for your down payment. You got to show them the money. Show me the money. Banks are good at that. So 30%. But what does it take to qualify for a loan? It takes, the banks have what they call the 5 C's of lending. I'm going to give you the first 3, because first of all, I can't remember the last 2, and the first 3 are the only ones that matter. Because if you don't get past those, you're not going to get to the other 2 anyway. The first one is character. What does that mean? It means your credit history. How you've behaved with money in the past is an indication of how you're going to behave with the bank's money in this situation. And if it's bad, if your credit is poor, they're going to say, thanks, but no thanks. There is no such thing as quick credit repair either, folks. It's good behavior over a long period of time. So if your credit is bad now, don't pay somebody to consolidate your debts and repair your credit, because it's not going to happen in any less than 3 to 5 years. And they're going to charge you a lot of money to consolidate your debts. Why would you want to do that? Just figure out your own financial situation. And by the way, Metro Community Development will help you do that. They're very good at that. So, credit score. Minimum 700, preferably 750. So character and the credit score. Those are 2 C's, but that's really just 1 C. It's all about the character. Second C is the cash. I've already mentioned that. You've got to come up with 30% of the cash. The third C is collateral. If you make it past credit, character, and cash, you've got to have enough stuff of enough value that it will be used to pledge against the loan. And generally, it's about double what you want to borrow. So if you're borrowing $70,000, it means you're going to have net current value of stuff that you own of $140,000. collateral. The days in which an individual or a business legal entity could sign for a loan and be the totally responsible party are long gone. You personally will have to guarantee that loan. You will have to complete a personal financial statement on which you will indicate everything that you've purchased, what you paid for it, what you still owe on it, and the difference is your net worth. And that number is the collateral number they're looking for. And if that doesn't come up to double what you want to borrow, you're collateral short. So, character, cash, collateral. A lot of times clients will say to me, I don't want to put my house up against my business. Well, then you weren't going to be borrowing money for the business because they're going to demand collateral. So, that sounds really awful. You know, most people, most startups don't go the bank route. That's really unusual. Hard. Not unusual, it's just hard. But let me tell you the story about my caterer. 10 years ago, she wanted to open a restaurant. It was her dream. She was doing catering out of her house under the cottage laws, and she was getting so big that she couldn't do any more. I mean, there's a limit on how much you can do from your home, a non-commercial kitchen. She said, well, I'd really love to do the restaurant thing now. And when we started talking about what it was going to cost, there was no way she could get a loan. She couldn't qualify. So I said, what is it you really want to do? You're doing catering now. Do you love that? She said, yeah, I really do love it. And I could keep doing catering. Okay, but I want to do more. I want to build this up, and I can't do it without a commercial kitchen. And I can't, obviously, I can't afford to build a commercial kitchen because that's the major cost of building a restaurant, right? Okay, where can you find a commercial kitchen? She went and talked to her church. The church had a full commercial kitchen because they had a daycare center. Health department licensed, all of the equipment necessary. She made a deal with the church. You know what they charged her for rent? $0. For 10 years, she had a free commercial kitchen. The trade-off was that she had to help them maintain their health department licensing, and she had to occasionally help the church volunteers decide what they needed to buy for church dinners, because when you cook for 10 versus 200 is a little different. So she helped them figure out their shopping list. She didn't have to cook for them, although she actually did. She volunteered a lot of times because she was a member of the church. 10 years. They started with nothing. I mean, they were going to Gordon Food Service with a few bucks out of their pocket and buying foil baking pans and serving dishes and things, and eventually, out of the cash they earned from one catering job to the next, getting bigger each time, they were able to buy for cash all of the equipment they needed. Now, it didn't happen in a year or two. We're talking 10 years. But it's about the will and the determination. It's not about the money. So, decision point 2. You've already done the market research and determined whether or not there's enough need and enough customers in your marketplace. And now you're looking at whether or not you have the funds to go forward or how much you've got to build this business model. And you're ready to move on to item number 4 in that starting a business checklist of the business plan. And we're going to go through this really quickly because all of this is in your book here. So, writing a business plan. Don't be an accidental entrepreneur. Be a purposeful entrepreneur. Know where you're headed and know how you're going to get there and what you've got to do to get there. That's what a business plan is. Define your goals. Identify your actions. And by doing so, you're going to reduce your risk. And if you're going to go to a bank or an investor, you've got to have a formal plan. And there's some basic elements to a plan. And again, I'm going to flip through these slides really quickly, but if you turn to pages 12 through 18 in this book, we've given you everything you could possibly want to know about a business plan. Pages 14 through 18 is an outline for a business plan, and it is a detailed outline. Within each of those 4 sections, we've given you a lot of bullet points to try to help you get a grasp of what kind of information you need to be thinking about in each of those 4 sections. Don't freak out because it's 4 pages long already. You're thinking, oh my God, if the outline is 4 pages long, this is going to be a 60-page business plan. For each one of those bullet points, you may have 1 sentence. You may not even apply to your business. So We just put that there so you get a sense of what should be covered in that particular section. Those are the 4 sections: business description, marketing and sales, management and operations, and financials. Executive summary is grayed out here because that's usually the first section. If you're going to go to a banker, you've got to have an executive summary. Some of you may need it, some of you may not. It's a good standalone document, but you can't do it until the business plan is done because it really is a kind of a summary, executive summary, and you can't summarize till you've done the plan. A lot of people try to write the summary first. Sometimes it works, actually, but sometimes you miss some key elements by doing that. We talk a little bit about the legal entities. That's in your book. There's actually a whole chapter about legal entities. Legal entity is not business license. Legal entity is the formal structure of your business. It could be sole proprietor, which means you as an individual can start a business right now using your own name, and you don't have to register anywhere or do anything. But you and the business are the same entity, and you have all the personal liability for anything that happens with your business. For some businesses, it's fine because you have very little risk exposure, so that's fine. But then there's other levels that create more legal protection for you, or liability protection. There's also tax issues associated with legal entities, so read about them. I'm not an attorney, nor am I an accountant. We, as SBDC counselors, do not give legal or financial advice because we're not certified. We can give you information, and the information is in this booklet. So marketing and sales, all that stuff we talked about in the research, those are the elements that you're going to be putting down relative to your type of business. All that stuff you discovered is going to go in there, and you're going to be able to define what your market looks like. You're going to talk about what your plan to market your business is going to be. And that's really important, especially for a startup business. If you don't have a marketing plan, I can't tell you the number of clients that have gone into business, and I keep saying, you got to do marketing. It's got to be consistent and persistent. Management and operations. You need to think through. Remember I talked about how the business, everybody gets focused on their product and service? We got to figure out what it's going to take to produce and deliver that. What are all the mechanisms or activities or other associated processes that have to be involved to get that product made or that service delivered to the customers? For some of you, it may be very simple. For some of you, especially if you're making something, there may be all kinds of processes, and there may be all kinds of people or associated businesses that are associated. You're going to have to think that through and kind of jot it down, map it out, so you know how all that's going to happen. When you start mapping it out, all of a sudden you go, oh, wait a minute, what about, and there's a piece missing. And it's a lot of times what happens is people start their business and they start doing things, and because they didn't think about that missing piece, that's the thing that causes a major speed bump in what they're trying to do, because they didn't think it through ahead of time. So management operations, who's going to do what in the business? And a lot of it is, yeah, you know, if you look at an organizational chart, all those boxes are filled with you. Your name is in every one because it's a single business, especially starting out. But not necessarily. She's talking about having her uncle help her. That's part of her team. Thinking that through and understanding again how you're going to compensate for some of the gaps in what you know how to do is an important part of this management and operations exercise. Business insurance is also an important thing to think about. Where do you look for business insurance or get information on it? Who has homeowners insurance or car insurance? Call your agent and ask them if they handle business lines. If they don't, who can they refer you to? Financials, the 4th section on financials. Most people get a little bit queasy when they have to start thinking about how do I do financial projections. I'm here to tell you that SBDC will hold your hand and walk you through that process if it's something that you're not comfortable with. We have a great Excel spreadsheet that we teach everybody how to use. We'll show you how to come up with the backstory behind the numbers that you're going to plug in, because especially if you're going to bank, you have to have that backstory. You have to be able to show what the assumptions are. How many customers, how many products, at what price, sold each month or sold, you know, whatever the period is that you're dealing with. You've got to have all that written down, because when a banker looks at your cash flow statement and he sees $15,000 in sales for the month, he says, where did that come from? So you're going to have a sheet of information that says it was X number of units sold at X price or Y price, whatever. So you got to have all that backstory in there too. We'll help you with that. Don't panic. And then last but not least, when you've gotten those 4 sections done, you go back through and you kind of summarize, just lift the highlights out. An executive summary is usually a page or less. And it's a great tool for marketing because it really synthesizes the nuts and bolts of what your business is. In the forming of your business, you're going to have a relationship with the government, both federal and state. Sorry, it's the way it is. You're going to have to deal with the state and the federal government. But depending on the type of business, sometimes that's a lot of stuff, sometimes it's not much. But if you want to figure out what all you're going to need to do for both state and federal connections, you can go to this state website, and they have a business simulator that you can answer questions so that it's asking to get information about your business and the kinds of things that it does, so that it can give you a report back on what you need relative to state and federal registrations. For example, if you're going to be selling products and going to an end consumer, even if you're assembling products, so you're buying materials, you're putting products together, and then you're selling a product to an end consumer, in Michigan, you have to collect sales tax. And you have to have a sales tax license to do that. And you have to register for that. They send you information about what you have to do and how frequently you have to report and when and how to remit those sales tax monies that you collect. But it will tell you how to do that. And it will tell you if you have some kind of an emission that your production is going to produce. You may have to get a permit from the Department of Environmental Quality, but it will tell you that because you've given it information about your type of business. In the state of Michigan, when you are ready to actually file for that sales tax license or that permit, you will go to this website and you'll set up an account with your business information. And it's very cool because the state of Michigan is really trying hard to go all electronic. And a lot of the registrations and the permits and the things that businesses need are now available to you online. A lot easier than having to surf around and find a form, fill it out, mail it in, wait, or drive it someplace to get it, processed. So eventually the goal is for them to be paperless and that all these things will be online. It isn't all there yet. Like if you're going to file for an LLC, you're still going to have to download a form and fill it out and mail it in. But there are a lot of things that you can do and have to do online. It's the only way you can register. So you'll have this report, it'll tell you what you need. Now for some of you that are thinking about a business, but you don't know what all those connections, those government connections might be, this is a good way to find out. I've actually had clients that started looking at all the stuff that they were going to be required, the regulatory requirements and the licensing and the permitting that would be required for that particular business, and they went, oh, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. But they were able to tell that by going to this website and doing the business simulator. So, great website, lots of resources on this website. We've already talked about what SBDC does. We are here to help you. You've got our website. There are other training opportunities available on our calendar on the website. There's one training opportunity I'd like to tell you about, and you have a handout. If you look at the handouts, it says Venture Plan Online. SBDC statewide decided that we would try to develop an online business planning program, and that's what Venture Plan Online is all about. The class costs $149. For that $149, you get a whole set of e-books. They will be sent to you electronically. All of your reading assignments are given to you. It's done electronically. You get an account number. You log in on a weekly basis for 8 weeks, 1 hour, 1 day a week. The class schedule that's coming up in the late summer and fall is here. If you're interested in this class, I highly suggest you sign up now because these classes do fill up quickly. One of the very cool tools about this class is a subscription to a business planning tool called Live Plan. It's an online interactive tool in which You know that outline that you've got in the book here that I told you about? Well, Live Plan is an outline formatted tool that you go to and you start typing in your stuff. It tells you what needs to go in this section, and it gives you examples, and then it gives you a box to type in your response for that particular section of the plan. And what's cool about Venture Plan Online is from day one you are assigned an SBDC counselor who will work with you by phone, by email, electronically. We can meet together too if you want, but generally speaking, the whole point of this is to make it as convenient as possible and do it as virtually as possible. So you get a consultant, and that consultant can check in with you on your Live Plan account and see what you're doing. So it's a great tool. That's an expensive subscription, but you get it free as part of this class for 6 months. Take a look at that sheet that was at the top of all the sheets in your handout packet. It says, Starting a Business, Next Steps. This is your homework. I've gone over the tools that you need and the where and the how to do market research and to do financial evaluation. Refine your idea. Figure out, do I need to go in a different direction? Do I need to do this a little bit differently? How do I go forward and make it work? Or there may be a decision. You may come to the conclusion, based on what you discover, that you don't go forward. And that's a legitimate decision, folks. Better you decide not to go forward than you go forward and fall into the quicksand. Once you've refined your idea and you're ready to move forward, start writing your business plan. The hardest part about writing a business plan is putting words to paper and getting going on it. You don't have to wait till you get through all those steps ahead of number 4 in that startup checklist. Go home sometime tonight or tomorrow. Sit down and write your business description in a Word document. You don't have to have a fancy document. And if you take Venture Plan Online and you're using the Live Plan tool, you can copy and paste it right in there. So you haven't wasted any time. But once you start putting words to paper, it starts to become real. It starts to be that thing that you can actually touch. It's not just those clouds floating around in your head anymore. So go home and at least sit down and write down what your business description is, because you've already got it in your head. It may change later based on what you discover. That's fine. This whole process is a moving process. It's a living process. As you run your business, it's a living business, and you're going to be adjusting for opportunities. You're going to be adjusting for things that get in the way. So start with what you know now, change it later based on what you discover. But get started. You don't have to wait. Consider, once you've identified some of your gaps, you may want to consider doing some other education. We get calls all the time. Where can I get QuickBooks training? QuickBooks is a great tool if you know how to use it, but you really need to learn how to use it because it's pretty fussy. And you really need to kind of understand accounting theory to work it correctly. When you are ready, you have started your business plan. You have a draft so that when you come in, you can show your counselor what you want to do, where you want to go, and how you think you're going to get there. In all of those sections, except perhaps the financials, you've got to have a little meat on the bones of that business plan. That's what a counselor needs to be able to help you go forward. We need to see where you're headed. We can't manufacture it for you. So you have to do that work. That's the investment you have to make right now for us to be able to help you. And we're glad to do that. And again, don't worry about the financial side of things. If you can do that, that's great. But we'll help you walk through that process. That's it. You're all set. You've got your books. I look forward to meeting some of you again in a counseling situation. Thank you all.